I'm David.
And I'm Thackeray.
And welcome to This Old Saab.
So I'm going to be putting Denso Iridium IQ22 plugs in my car. And if you're interested in what led to this particular choice of plug, check out this companion video where I discuss what kind of information you need to use to make an informed choice about the plugs that you put in your car. Okay, so let's talk spark plugs real quick. The stock plugs for your 2.0 Ecotech Saab 9.3 are PFR 6D or 6T 10G. They're interchangeable for the purposes of your car. It will run fine with either ones. These are the ones to put in your stock 2.0 little t or big T Saab 9.3. This is what's in the owner's manual. You even can get them Saab branded depending on where you buy them. Now, if you've tuned your car, all bets are off. You can still use these, but we'll explain why in a minute. You might want to go to a different type of plug. The go-to for decades now has been these copper tip BCPR7ES from NGK. These are wonderful plugs. My car is tuned and it loves them. They're cheap, they're easy to get, just as easy as the stock plugs. Now I am putting instead these Denso Iridium IQ22 plugs in my car. What I wanted to cover in this video is why I'm using these plugs instead of these ones, although truthfully I typically use these. And that decision point is fundamentally related to the heat profile of the plug. So the stock plugs are rated with a 6, PFR 6D or T 10G. And what this means is that this is actually a pretty hot plug. I'll show a chart here on the screen so you can see where this falls in NGK's lineup. Your Saab was designed to have a hot ignition environment in the cylinder. Now, why do you want a hot plug? Well, it keeps the tip clean. Hotter plugs burn all the material in the combustion chamber more easily. It's beautiful. You can't tell that I ran this thing for a long time. Now, if we compare that with the BCPR7ES, one thing you'll notice is how much bigger the electrode is at the top. This is a copper plug. It's a lower grade plug, essentially, from the platinum stock plugs for your car. But the reason people put these in their tuned vehicles is they're affordable, great, but they're also cooler. This is a 7. So what happens when you tune your car is you're typically pushing more aggressive timing. You're typically pushing higher boost pressures and a more aggressive boost mapping. So maybe you're pushing higher boost, lower in the RPM, and also in lower gears than your car would have from the factory. And so it's going to get hotter in the cylinder to begin with. If your cylinder combustion climate is too hot, such that it's out of spec, let's say, you're going to experience what's called knock, which is a term people throw around for pre-ignition, meaning actually the solution inside the cylinder is combusting sooner than the engine control unit wants to, and sooner than is optimal to get the maximum power back out of the car. So pre-ignition, or knock, is going to reduce the performance of your vehicle. It also, if it's severe and happens for a sustained period, can damage the valves on your car, and then you need to do a valve job, which is not cheap. So with all of that in mind, when you tune your car, the go-to recommendation is, okay, your car's combustion climate is going to be hotter, so let's run a slightly cooler plug to compensate for that. That's why you go to a 7. There's nothing magical about this plug. Indeed, this is a cheap plug. Readily available, cheap. Copper plugs, it will wear more quickly than the platinum plug. Now, the IQ22 is Denso's equivalent to a 7. The 22 is a 7 heat on their spark plug heat range scale. So this is actually an equivalent temperature plug. What sets this plug apart from this plug is that this has a quick wearing fat copper electrode, whereas this has a really fine iridium electrode design. And a finer tip like this is going to have a more consistent, predictable spark. So what that essentially means is that it's easier for your engine control unit to predict and adapt to changes in the combustion climate in the cylinder, when you're getting on boost or getting off boost, when your car is hotter versus colder. That's the real magic of a smaller tipped electrode like this. Again, the platinum plugs are also small. They're not quite as fine as the iridium plugs. But the stock plugs are really, really good on these cars. So these are essentially equivalent as far as the overall performance profile of the plugs, except that this is going to be a longer lasting spark plug, and it's going to have a more predictable spark. So this is why I'm swapping in these iridium plugs. Now there are iridium 7 heat range NGK plugs as well. These Densos are really, really good quality. This is kind of a fan favorite. These are known to be really good plugs. Now the last thing I wanted to address is this common recommendation that I'm seeing on the web. When your car is tuned, put in an IQ24 from Denso. And I'm not doing that. And I wanted to explain why I'm not doing that. I've done it before. In fact, I think, yep, here's an IQ24 box. Now that you know the meaning of the heat ranges and how it's related to the performance of your car, you should understand that the IQ24 plugs that people are recommending are the equivalent of an 8 on the NGK heat scale. That's 2 full steps colder than the stock plugs. So how do you choose between an IQ22 or a BCPR7ES kind of plug and the IQ24, and why are people recommending the IQ24s? Well, recently someone did some track tests with these versus IQ24s, and they discovered, oh wow, under extreme loads, the combustion climate is cooler, and that allows the car to push a little bit more aggressive timing and get a little bit more aggressive performance out of otherwise the same hardware. And so the conclusion was the IQ24s are better than the BCPR7ES. If you're going to be racing on the track or doing really sustained high temp driving, you want to go with cooler plugs. If you want an all-arounder or a daily driver, you're going to want a hotter plug. Now, we've already discussed how staying stock is probably not the right way to go because your car is going to run hotter than it was designed to when you've tuned it. And so this is really the heat range that's a daily driver, all-arounder temperature profile. And the IQ24s, these are going to be too cool for stop and go traffic in the city. They will foul up, I can tell you from experience. Yes, they're cooler than the BCPR7ES. That's because this is an 8 heat range equivalent to a 7 heat range equivalent. So if you got an 8 heat range iridium NGK plug, it will probably perform almost the same as an IQ24 in a track setting. My car is aggressively tuned, and if I was going to do track race day, or if I was going to do a long cannonball across the country drive, for example, where I'm pushing high temps for a sustained period, I would run the IQ24s. But this is my daily driver car. I live in the city. I do a lot of stop and go driving, and I can tell you from experience, these will foul up. If you do a lot of time sitting in traffic, accelerating for a brief period, and then sitting in traffic again. And that's why we're going with IQ22s. And hopefully this has now given you the context you need to make some decisions for your application. One last tip for using these plugs in your car. A lot of people will tell you to gap your BCPR7ES plugs down. Close the gap from, say, 1 millimeter down to 0.85 or 0.8. I agree with that, and that's what I've always done with my car, but do not gap iridium plugs. It is critical that you do not touch or damage this tiny electrode. It's a small gap to begin with. Clean as a whistle. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this informative. Hit like and subscribe.